This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
"6:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Lal Malavarachi and read by Rumesh Piris. First the headlines. Litre gas shipment to arrive tomorrow. The central bank governor warns inflation could hit 70%. The IGP says the police respect the right of the people to peaceful assembly. The report on June 28 Kandakadu incident released. South Korea to issue E7 visas to Lankan workers. In news overseas, Boris Johnson pledges no big policy changes before departure. And in sports, the second and final test against Australia will be played from today. Now the local news in detail. Litre Gas Company states that the arrival of the ship carrying 3,724 metric tons of liquefied petroleum gas is scheduled to arrive in the island tomorrow, the 9th of July. Initially, the vessel was expected to reach the country between the 6th and 8th of this month. It has been informed that the ship would be delayed further due to changes in the weather conditions. The governor of the central bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, says headline inflation could increase to 70% in the next few months. The central bank governor said if inflation increases further, companies will face major difficulties to remain in business. Speaking during a media briefing in Colombo, Governor Veerasinghe said the central bank is taking decisions to safeguard the most vulnerable groups in the society who will be affected by the increase in inflation. He said they will have to look into social safety net programs such as Samurdhi to help the poor. The governor noted that due to certain decisions and adjustments, inflation rate will increase and small and medium-scale businesses that have taken loans will face difficulties in honouring their debt. The Inspector General of Police, C.D. Vikramaratne, says the police respects the right of the people to peaceful assembly, but will take action against individuals damaging public property and private property. The IGP, in a special message to the public, requested citizens to exercise their rights within the legal framework. The IGP said the Sri Lanka Police respects the public's right to freedom of speech and expression. He claimed the police will uphold and protect the rights of the people to assemble in a peaceful manner as well. The IGP noted the police will act according to their duties against any violence that is against the law and requested social, religious and political leaders to act in a responsible manner when exercising their right to protest as well. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Scan the Lanka QR code and make your payments with People's Pay mobile payment app from People's Bank.
And continuing with more local news, the report of the investigation into the incident that occurred at the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Centre on the 28th of June is scheduled to be handed over to the Commissioner General of Rehabilitation, Major General Darshana Hettiarachchi, on Thursday. The report will then be handed over to the Minister of Justice by the Commissioner General of Rehabilitation. Nearly 700 inmates who fled from the centre that day had been taken back into custody from the security forces. Meanwhile, four Army and Air Force sergeants who were deployed as advisors at the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Centre are currently in remand custody after being arrested over the death of an inmate at the centre. The Minister of Agriculture, Mahinda Amaraveera, says the ship of urea fertilizer promised to be delivered to Sri Lanka from India is scheduled to arrive at the port of Colombo tomorrow. He said the fertilizer could be distributed to farmers from July 15th. The stock of urea will be distributed to agrarian service centres through the Fertilizer Secretariat, Commercial Fertilizer Company and Ceylon Fertilizer Company. A 50-kilogram bag of fertilizer will be sold for 10,000 rupees by the agrarian service centres. The minister added the fertilizer will be provided to paddy and maize farmers during the Yada season. And that ends local news.
Nobody tells time like this. So why do you still pay with cash when you have People's Pay mobile app from People's Bank? Scan the Lanka QR code and make your payments with People's Pay mobile payment app from People's Bank.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on to the main news story. The Korean ambassador to Sri Lanka, Santos Bonjinjong, promised to draw attention of the Korean government over providing E7 visa facility for Sri Lankan workers who worked in Korea for more than 10 years and returned. E7 visa holders can invite their spouse and children for a stable working life. The decision was revealed during a discussion held between the Korean ambassador and Foreign Employment Minister Manusha Nanakara at the Ministry on Thursday. The discussion was also focused on providing more job opportunities to Sri Lanka in Korea and providing international-level technical training programs to the workforce of this country. And that came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight this morning, steps have been taken to provide fuel coupons to those engaged in the tourism industry to counter the ongoing fuel crisis. The program will be implemented with the support of the Ministry of Tourism, the Sri Lanka Transport Board and the Sri Lanka Army. Accordingly, Minister of Tourism and Lands Harin Fernandez said drivers registered with the Tourism Ministry can obtain fuel coupons after submitting their itinerary to the Ministry. Minister Fernando had noted that drivers can also visit the office of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority and provide the relevant information and obtain the relevant fuel coupons. And that came to you in Watchlight. Moving on to a bulletin of world news, and first the headlines. Boris Johnson pledges no big policy changes before departure. Russian UN veto could threaten aid deliveries to 3 million people in Syria. Argentine ex-army officer jailed over dirty war crimes against humanity. Now the world news in detail. Boris Johnson has promised his cabinet that he will not use his remaining time as Prime Minister to make major changes of direction. The Prime Minister has caved into pressure from ministers to quit as Tory leader, but wants to stay in number 10 until the party chooses who should replace him. His collapse in support has promised some Tories to urge him to go now. But a newly promoted cabinet minister says Mr. Johnson has agreed to carry on as a caretaker prime minister. Russia has threatened to veto a UN Security Council resolution reauthorizing cross-border deliveries of vital aid into opposition-held northwestern Syria. The closure of the last route from Turkey would immediately put more than 3 million people at risk of starvation. The UN says the number of Syrians in need is higher now than at any point during the 11-year civil war, as the toxic mix of years of fighting from the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine has devastated the country's economy. The World Food Programme says the cost of food has risen by 800% in just 2 years. A court in Argentina has sentenced 19 former military officers to long-term prison terms for crimes against humanity during the country's military dictatorship during 1976 to 1983. The crimes include forced disappearances, murder, torture and kidnapping of children. Among those sentenced was General Santiago Riveros, previously convicted for other human rights violations. He received a life sentence after being found guilty of more than 100 crimes. Back to the headlines of the world news. Boris Johnson pledges no big policy changes before departure. Russian UN veto could threaten aid deliveries to 3 million people in Syria. An Argentine ex-army officer jailed over dirty war crimes against humanity. And that concludes world news. Moving on to development news, 45 schools in the southern province will be developed. The development project will be initiated under the guidance of the Ministry of Zonal Education. Modern technological equipment and computers will also be provided to these schools. 1 million rupees will be given as financial assistance to develop the infrastructure facilities of schools. And that came to you in development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank, we present your future.
And in sports, it's cricket. The second and final test against Australia will be played from today at the Galle International Esplanade. Skipper Dimuth Karunaratne says that he hopes Sri Lankan spinner reinforcements will deliver despite their team's COVID outbreak on the eve of the second test. One-day heroes Mahesh Theekshana and Dunith Wellalage could be handed test caps as the hosts bid for a comeback in the final test starting today. Australia leads the two-match series 1-0 after sealing a convincing win in the first test by 10 wickets. And that came to you in sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And in business news, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka has once again stepped up to provide its expertise to medium-level businesses in the country by helping them transform and enter the global marketplace. CA Sri Lanka, together with People's Bank, recently kicked off yet another important SME monitoring program aimed at providing knowledge and expertise, including access to finance for the benefit of 34 medium-level entrepreneurs to reach high levels in their respective industries. And that was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Economic news, courtesy of...
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
And on to economic news. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to increase its standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate by 100 basis points to 14.50% and 15.50% respectively. Having noted the higher than expected escalation of headline inflation recently and the increased persistence of high inflation in the period ahead, the Monetary Board was of the view that a further monetary policy rate tightening would be necessary to contain any build-up of adverse inflation expectations. And that came to you in economic news.
LOLC Finance is taking the power of innovation to the next level, winning 5 golds at the Technovation Awards 2022, leading the digital revolution with cutting-edge interbanking digital payments. LOLC Finance claims the overall gold award, whilst also claiming an extraordinary victory in digital banking. LOLC Finance will continue to innovate with the next generation digitalization of financial services, delivering a superior customer experience.
And on to the weather report. The Meteorological Department forecasts several spells of showers to occur in the Sabaragamu province and in Nuwara Eliya and Kandy districts. A few showers may occur in the Western province and in Galle and Matara districts. Strong winds, about 40 to 50 kilometers per hour, can be expected at times in the western slopes of the Central Hills and in Southern province. And that was the weather report. And to conclude this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. Little gas shipment to arrive tomorrow. The central bank governor warns inflation could hit 70%. The IGP says the police respect the right of the people to peaceful assembly. The report on June 28th Kandakadu incident released. South Korea to issue E7 visas to Lankan workers. In news overseas, Boris Johnson pledges no big policy change before departure. And in sports, it's cricket. The second and final test against Australia will be played from today. And with that, we conclude this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.